Welcome to the NDE Insight channel. Today, we delve further into the near-death experience of Tsuruhiko Kiuchi, a prominent figure in the international astronomical community renowned for his outstanding contributions to astronomy. Having discovered 4 new comets single-handedly, he stands among the most prolific comet discoverers of the past century. Such is his stature that the international astronomical community honored him by naming a small asteroid after him. Despite being a pure scientist with no religious affiliations, Kiuchi authored a book detailing his posthumous experiences, setting an extraordinary world record in near-death encounters. Let's start the second part of his NDEs.
I am clearly standing here, but everyone is desperately trying to save my body. I gradually begin to find it very interesting. It just so happened that during that time, I was reading Einstein's theory of relativity, so I found the idea of being able to move instantly very intriguing. So, this is teleportation, right? In that case, can I also go back to the past? I suddenly thought so because of something that happened in the past that weighed heavily on my mind. The incident involves someone speaking to my younger self. We have to go back to when I was 6 years old. At that time, my 3 brothers and sisters and I went swimming in the Chikuma River. To get to the river, we had to pass through a steep cliff covered with rocks, making walking difficult and dangerous due to the possibility of large stones rolling down. While dodging the rocks and happily walking downhill, I heard a voice behind me say, "Danger." I turned around and saw a large rock rolling down above my sister. She was walking obliviously. I pushed her from behind, causing her to fall backward just as a large rock, about a meter wide, rolled down from between us. My sister, who I had pushed down, fell forward, causing her big toes to be lifted off the ground. She cried hysterically. Our older brothers and sisters, who had already reached the riverbank, thought I had pushed my sister intentionally. I tried desperately to explain that someone had warned us of danger, but no one believed me, and I was scolded relentlessly. However, I was still very proud that I had saved my sister. Because of this incident, I have always been curious about who said danger back then. When I was lying in the hospital bed, in such an incomprehensible state, the first thing that came to mind was that incident. If it's possible to travel through time and space and freely move around, then I must go back to that time to see. I started to vividly recall the scene by the river when I was 6 years old. Next thing I knew, I instantly moved to the steep cliff by the Chikuma River at that time. When I arrived at the spot, I saw my young self and my sister about 5 meters away from me, with a large rock about to fall on the path ahead. I couldn't help but shout danger at this moment. Young me looked in the direction of the voice. The one who shouted danger when I was 6 years old turned out to be myself. It turns out the voice at that time was my own voice. Often, people describe how they are protected by guardian angels or ancestors, but I wonder if those who bless and protect us might be ourselves. Perhaps it's the consciousness of the person who will pass away in the future returning to the past and helping their past self. One knows one's own affairs best. That's why one's future self comes to help when one needs it the most. This explanation makes more sense to me. What I saw in the future actually happened. After returning to the past, I returned to the hospital room again. I gradually started to find it interesting. Thinking that if I can move so freely, I should take a look at the future next. Just then, I began to feel that besides my own consciousness, another consciousness was slowly approaching. That feeling is really hard to describe, but it seems to be a consciousness so vast that it's incomparable to mine, an infinite consciousness. Perhaps one could say it's a realm where one's memories, experiences, and feelings are all melded into one, a completely natural state. There's no me, no you, it's a world where everything is merged together without pain or worry. I guess after people die, they might all be absorbed by this huge consciousness. In it, there's no me, no individuality. If it's perfect, it's indeed a perfect state. But for someone like me who's curious, it can also be extremely boring. Sooner or later, everyone will be absorbed by this consciousness. If that's the case, I want to enjoy this experience of freely moving around a little longer. So, I resisted against that consciousness, trying hard to think about the future. Of course, I couldn't imagine the specific scenes and images, but I still strongly thought about my own future. So, I instantly moved to two future scenes. One of them was in a large Japanese-style room of about 15 tatami mats, with about 30 people arranged in the shape of a door, all listening attentively to a person wearing a gray shirt speaking. The room had an impressive alcove with a hanging scroll depicting geometric shapes in vermilion, looking quite historical. It felt like my gaze was just looking down at the room's ceiling at a 45-degree angle, overlooking the entire room. I curiously thought, who could the speaker be? So, I moved next to the speaker. When I stared at his face, I was shocked. It was none other than my middle-aged self speaking about celestial bodies. Although I don't remember what I said at the time, from the way I spoke, it seemed like a very important meeting. I happily thought, if this is the future, it means I'm still alive. And the other future I saw was truly incredible. It feels like a double exposure photograph. At that time, two scenes overlapped. One scene, I don't know where it was, but elderly me was chatting happily about stars with children while looking through a telescope. The other overlapped scene was of elderly me wandering confusedly on a street that had become a ruin. I couldn't tell what had happened, but there were charred corpses and injured people lying around, and I could only walk helplessly along that road. The scene was extremely frightening. The future where I attended a meeting in a large Japanese-style room had come true. In 1994, 22 years after my death at the age of 22, I was invited to participate in the Future of the World Lies in Kyoto forum held at Mount Koya and gave a speech at the Kayazumi Heart Institute, a Shingon Buddhist temple. Strangely, when I stepped into the Kayazumi Heart Institute, I felt a sense of familiarity. It was my first visit to Mount Koya in my life, but it felt nostalgic. I thought, maybe this is the Japanese-style room I saw when I was on the brink of death. However, there were some differences. The hanging scroll in the alcove was different, and the feeling of the room was somewhat different. I was disappointed, thinking that those were just my illusions. But in the evening, when the paper door behind me was open for the speech, I gasped in astonishment because the Japanese-style room that appeared before my eyes was exactly the same as the one I saw back then, about 15 tatami mats in size. Unexpectedly, there was another room when the door was opened. Whether it was the seats arranged in the shape of a door or the vermilion geometric pattern hanging in the alcove, it was exactly the same as what I saw during my near-death experience. This scene was truly spine-chilling. In shock, I desperately searched for similarities in my memory. So, the speaker at that time was wearing a gray shirt. As I thought about it, I looked at my own polo shirt, which was green. It turns out not all scenes were exactly the same. Just as I was thinking about it, I stepped onto the stage, and the overhead fluorescent light shone down, causing my green polo shirt to appear gray under the light. So, everything matched exactly with what I saw at the time. The future I saw during my near-death experience had come true. This proved that I had indeed visited the future at that time. If that's the case, how will the other overlapping future scene I saw unfold? Will it be the peaceful future where elderly me chats with children about stars, or the miserable future where I wander on the dilapidated street? Perhaps this future is still undecided. I believe there are two possibilities for the future, a beautiful one and a tragic one. The choice is in our hands now. Could it be that I was resurrected from near death because I have a mission to fulfill, to actively urge everyone towards the best path, having seen the future as someone who has experienced it? At that time, although I didn't have the self-awareness of carrying such a heavy responsibility, the experience of seeing two future possibilities, peace and misery, did change the course of my life significantly.